So our concept is a triage chatbot. If you want to go to the next slide, Brad. And the agenda for what we'll cover in our demonstration today is an introduction to the concept, what it is that we've come up with, what the technical specifications would be to achieve something like this, and what the market analysis says for the need for something like this. Next slide. So what is the triage chatbot? So when you think about acute care and you think about calling your primary care doctor because you have something wrong and you're put through to the nurse triage line, or you're calling your doctor after hours and you're routed to a call center where there's a triage line, what would it look like if we could use AI in the assistance of the data capture and be able to use our technology to pull together a full clinical record that augments that AI? Being able to serve up to the nurse recommendations that are helpful in that triage narrative. Next slide. So we put together a really, really high level nurse triage storyline. We've got a patient that's writing in and basically saying, I've been having severe headaches and blurred vision. Next slide. And the triage chatbot basically says, can you provide a brief description of your symptoms? What's going on? Well, these are a little bit out of order. But anyway, John says, I've got a headache and blurred vision for the past 3 hours. Next slide. In the background, the technology is grabbing data that's available for the clinical narrative for this particular patient from the EHR, from the HIE, from any other healthcare systems that are available. And basically it was saying that the narrative for this patient says that this patient was diagnosed with hypertension 2 years ago, that he takes lisinopril, he's got no known allergies, and he's got a slightly elevated cholesterol. So this helps the narrative for what the AI tool is looking at when this patient has this chief complaint. Next slide. And there's a little bit more of a narrative that goes back and forth. I want to gather some more information. Can you tell me what your pain scale is? He says it's about an 8. Do you have any other symptoms like nausea, dizziness, or history of migraines? To which he says, feeling a little nauseous, a little bit dizzy, but no history of migraines. Next slide. And using all of that information together, the AI then puts up recommendations to the nurse so that when the nurse receives this information, the back and forth with the patient has already happened and the intelligence gathering with the clinical information has already happened. So it serves up those recommendations sort of right into the nurse's lap for the nurse to be able to review and decide the next action or the best course of therapy for that particular patient. So now I'm going to hand it over to Brad, who's going to talk about how we do this from a technology perspective.
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, so let's take a look at the technology behind this. So at its core, it's an AI-powered chatbot. For the LLM, it's using calls via API to OpenAI. It's using Iris for Health for 2 key features here, as the vector store and also as the integration engine, pulling patient data from other sources. It's an agentic workflow, so it's using specialized agents to handle tasks using Model Context Protocol. Then it's using Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, to provide relevant clinical context based on health data retrieved for our patient. It's going to also escalate to a nurse if there are any uncertainty or red flags that are found when communicating with the patient. So a little dive further into the technology. It can use voice to text to act as the call center. So the patient calls in, tells about the problem, and the chatbot will collect demographic and symptom data from the patient in a simple conversation. As I mentioned, Iris for Health is integral to the whole process as the vector store and integration engine. Now let's take a look at the agentic workflow. So we see 3 main agents here. An intake agent will gather the patient demographics, collect, normalize, vectorize patient data, and store it in Iris Vector Store. It's going to extract and vectorize the patient chief complaints, symptoms, duration, and severity. And then it's going to perform similarity search to retrieve the relevant data as context for the RAG. Then there's the triage decision agent. This agent is going to assign an urgency tier. Is it emergent, urgent, routine, or administrative? And the final agent is the routing agent. They're going to create a structured summary, generate FHIR resources, and route to the correct caregiver queue. So now let's do a short demo. I can switch over here. So I have an example of our Triage Chatbot.
Thank you for contacting the Intake Center at Regional Medical Center. How are you doing today?
I have a headache.
Sorry to hear that you're experiencing a headache. How long have you had this headache?
It's been the last few days.
I understand. That sounds uncomfortable. On a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst pain, how severe is your headache? Sounds quite painful. Are you experiencing any other symptoms along with the headache, like nausea, vision changes, or anything else?
I am very thirsty.
Feeling very thirsty can be important to note. Have you noticed any changes in your urination or any recent changes in your blood sugar levels?
I should check my blood sugar levels.
It's a good idea, especially since you have a history of diabetes. It's important to keep an eye on your blood sugar. Please check your blood sugar, and if it's high or if your headache doesn't improve, consider reaching out to your doctor. A nurse will review and may follow up.
So we can see that as because it has access to my medical record, it knows that I have diabetes. We can ask a couple more things. I also feel dizzy.
This may be urgent. Call emergency services now.
Okay, so we can take a look behind the scenes, the agent insights. So this is kind of the behind the scenes what's going on. So it's interacting both with the patient but also with Iris as the vector store, querying the database and pulling all that information, and then routing the patient to an emergency queue. And we can also see the data that's stored in the Iris vector store. We can also do a SQL search on this table, and we can see the actual embeddings that are stored in the Iris vector store using the InterSystems Iris management portal SQL wizard. So now I'm going to jump back into the slideshow, and we'll go to Vic to talk about the market analysis.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, that was a really cool demo. So we can go to the next slide. So really, the reason why we decided to make this Triage chatbot was because there's a huge market need that we've identified. So the intake process is really difficult for both patients who can struggle to get their triage taken care of in a timely manner, and also for providers who might be overburdened and have to do these routine tasks over and over again. It's a pretty perfect use case for AI to help cut down on that kind of rote procedure. The financial side of it is also important to note, because administrative expenses make up a lot of healthcare expenditures for healthcare in general, and particularly in the United States, it takes up a larger share, as well as in the United States having higher general healthcare expenditures than the rest of the world per capita as well. So these compounding factors means that North America, the United States, is a really great place to start for this. But certainly, it could be used worldwide or in any market really. We can go to the next slide. And to just speak a little bit more to the size of the market, we see that there are studies showing that referral management software, and healthcare chatbot markets are growing rapidly with double-digit growth over the next several years. So probably no surprise to anybody, AI is really taking off. And so that adoption in the healthcare space and the software space is huge. So we've got this combination of the business side and kind of the real world case that we need a solution like this, and there's money being directed toward this as well to kind of address it. We can go to the next slide. So like I mentioned, this solution could be used for providers of all kinds of different sizes, but generally probably ambulatory sites are going to have the most benefit from it, just because by their nature of having a large turnover, they need to triage a ton of patients on a daily basis. And so reducing that work can kind of go a longer way, because they just have to be turning people over day by day. And I would say that in terms of the size of the organizations that we would be looking to target, smaller teams might have a little bit more difficulty with digital adoption, and large enterprises might have trouble with kind of getting through AI review and implementing something kind of enterprise-wide. So probably, mid-size would be a good start, where they're kind of still agile enough to innovate and implement these new technologies, but having some good resources to help set up AI as needed. So we'll go to the next slide. Certainly, the idea of an AI chatbot and helping with triage is not a brand new idea. There's a variety of companies that are addressing this kind of across the spectrum. Some on the very big enterprise side, some on the startup side. Some are kind of more referral management platforms. Some are more focused on the AI chatbot side. So we're certainly not making any claims to be the first to the space. But at the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about why we think we can do it better. And so InterSystems basically has a lot of great expertise in technology and the healthcare space that I think makes our solution kind of stand out and able to perform better than other people's solutions. So because we have kind of an integrated platform, we've got the ability to integrate with different systems using our own integration engine. We have the ability to do the RAG procedures and the vector search on Iris as well, because it's got that multi-model vector capability. This all being kind of on one unified technology stack is not something that most competitors can do. A lot of them are relying on kind of piecemeal third-party technologies to kind of patch up different parts of their solution to meet the total need. But for us, we can kind of build it all on Iris, and that is a really compelling way to deliver a solution and lower the total cost of ownership for anybody who's looking to implement a chatbot. And that's our demo. Thanks so much for your time. Hopefully you found it interesting, and please give us a vote in the demo showcase if you liked what we presented.